We're back.
We are back.
This is the One Step Better podcast. Helping small businesses make wins each and every week. Welcome back to the One Step Better podcast, Matt Patrick.
Hey,
Good
man.
to have you here, bud.
Good to be
so it's
here.
been a little bit. We've taken a little bit of a hiatus for a variety of reasons that are mostly my fault. But we're back now. We're going to get back into rhythms, back into routines. And so today we're going to talk about some of the common mistakes that small businesses make, small business owners and their leadership teams make. And so to jump into that, Matt, I got a question for you.
Okay.
Let's pretend that you have $100,000 sitting on the kitchen table at home.
Sweet.
What are you going to spend it on?
If I had $100,000 and had to spend it kind of like the Brewster's Million thing, if you're watching the movie Brewster's Million, I'd probably buy the coolest trip I could figure out how to spend.
Yeah.
I'd want to go somewhere and do something fun, like African safari or Great Barrier Reef dive or something cool like that.
Yeah.
I think I would spend a lot of money on a trip, probably.
Yeah, that's an interesting movie. So the premise here is he's got a bunch of money. He cannot buy anything that lasts more than...
It's no assets.
Yeah, it's
assets.
just I have to spend it on stuff.
And
I
no
can't
one
give
can
it
know
away.
what he's doing.
And yeah.
No.
Yeah. Hey, here's a $100,000 tip for somebody.
Yeah.
Or,
I love that he bought a rare stamp and then mailed it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a great movie. If you haven't seen it, Richard Pryor, 1980s. They get to play the Yankees.
Yeah.
Which was pretty cool.
Interesting concept.
Very cool concept.
I think the idea of I got $100,000 on the table. It really starts to make me think through how mature am I really? Because I
cool car.
Yeah, I'm gonna go buy a boat or a car or just something ridiculous that is gonna fade away in 10 days, and it's like, oh, that was kind of cool at the time.
Yeah.
But versus being the wise, mature, responsible adult and
put it in the market on a nice T-bill.
I'm gonna go invest in my future.
Yeah.
And that concept is really not any different than the decisions that we make every day. It may not be $100,000 sitting on the table, but one of our most precious resources is time. And a lot of days we wake up and it's all right. How am I going to spend my time today? Am I going to do something that's going to really invest in maybe my business and my future, or am I going to spend it wasting away on Sudoku or playing on my phone or whatever it may be?
Yep.
There's probably a balance, in what's healthy in between the two, but it's a common issue that we deal with every day as people who operate a business, and it's no different than the struggles that our clients have. And so today we're going to talk about some of the mistakes that our clients make and that we make every single day in leading small businesses. And today that topic is really geared towards the idea of short-term versus long-term decision making. Am I going to put a Band-Aid on my problem, or am I going to find the underlying cause of what's the root of my issues and go about fixing those? So Matt, as you think back over your years of operating a business, how do you balance the decision making process between what's right for today versus what's right for maybe 5-10 years from today?
It's so hard. This is a very interesting topic for me. If I think back real quick about all the things we've done, I think through technology decisions we've made. I think through hiring decisions or firing decisions we've made. We hire out of desperation, which means we don't have a recurring stream of new potential candidates to hire because we haven't spent the time to build up the recruiting with dollars and effort and resources to make it successful. So then we get to pick our potential candidates out of the very small pool that we get to choose from, and then we're upset when we don't get a lot of choices. Early on, it was a lot of technology decisions, like putting Band-Aids on something. I know this process isn't ideal. I don't love this technology, but gosh, the alternative is so expensive. I couldn't possibly do that. And that was definitely some of the early decisions I had. But I think the most costly when it comes to this, in my mind, is, having to let go of an employee that's not an ideal fit, either culture or technically, or, you got a bad apple in your midst, and you're putting up with stuff because you're afraid of the alternative of who else is going to do the work, and it probably will fall back on me.
A classic example that I always hear a lot used is I have maybe a really high-performing individual, whether let's say it's a salesperson that's really killing it, bringing in a bunch of new business. but they're just really unpleasant to be around. Maybe
Yep.
they're a jerk. Maybe they don't treat clients well. Maybe they're, whatever it is. But,
Yep.
I don't want to deal with that problem because, man,
The
it's a
alternative
rainmaker.
the alternative is, well, we don't sell as much as we want. Or the alternative is I have to do all the work, or I have to do the sales. And every owner, I think, goes through this early. I think all the time, not early. I think it's a constant problem.
Yeah.
It is definitely something that when you do pull the Band-Aid off and decide to do it, inevitably, you're like, why did I do this 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Bundling. For quite some time, it's been all the rage in the insurance industry. But what if you could take it a step further? Payroll, HR, insurance, benefits administration, all with the same vendor, all with the same number to call. Welcome to the Works Way. One team with one focus. Run your back office seamlessly so you can have more time to do what you really want to do. Works. Simplify the tedious.
Here the past week or so, we had about 40 different accounting firms come into our office and open up and share about what's going on, what's happening. And a recurring theme is, this is a problem that I have. I know the solution may be I need to hire an individual, or I need to implement some new systems and processes, or maybe I need to button down my client list and kind of who I'm working with, whatever. I know what that looks like. But dadgum, I have 800 things on my plate that I have to get done, and if I don't do them, nobody's going to do them. And so I know that those other things are really what's going to fix me long term, but I just can't bring myself around to making it happen. And I do think that's something that kind of iterates along with the growth of your business. It's early. If I'm maybe a team of 3 or 5 or 7 people, it's probably harder for me to think long term because I have to get out of the hole that I'm in right now.
Yep.
But the bigger that you grow, you still have that same problem. Just the problems are probably a little bit larger, and they have a multiplying effect to the individuals that they impact. But it's no different than if I'm a solopreneur versus I have a team of 50 people under me.
Yeah, it is. The alternative the challenge when you're really small, and I say that 5 to 10 employee range is, if you have one person or 2 people in your team that aren't ideal, or they are high producing, but there's
always a but.
But right, if the but's the problem, then if the alternative is to let them go, it means you could be impacting what is up to 20% of your workforce, and going, how am I going to get that production? How am I going to get that thing I have to do done? Am I going to get, is it salesperson, is it a person in operations, whatever that is? How am I going to get that work done? And you start like, gosh, I really don't have an alternative right now. When you're larger, you have a little bit more flexibility. So if you lose 2 people out of 50, that's obviously a lot lower percentage. But the same problem exists in that those 2 people could have the impact on 100%. Mm-hmm. And so being really diligent about, the type of person you want to have and the type of clients, let's say it's the customers you're serving, or that's the same as you're saying yes to something you shouldn't have said yes to in the work-wise. I think it's the multiplier effect of that bad decision has ripples as it keeps going farther and farther out, and you gotta really think that through, and it's a really hard decision to make. And I know it's one of those things where you definitely get short-sighted on the, gosh, it's not, well, is it that bad? Well, it's just a one-time thing or whatever. It's just making excuses for what is inevitable.
And I think it's important to be honest with yourself as a leader to say, what, maybe this is an irritation for me because maybe it's a personality conflict or whatever it is, but it's not really a problem for the organization or for the team. Because whenever you have that self-awareness to say, oh, this is a problem with me as maybe the leader of the team or the business owner, whoever it is, sometimes it may be that I just kind of have to kind of suck it up and learn to deal with it, because this is a relational problem, not necessarily a systemic or personality conflict with the team. And you have the freedom as the position that you're in to say, hey, it doesn't matter if I don't like you, then you can't be here. And sometimes that's perfectly okay to do. But you have to have the awareness to know, all right, is this a problem that's going to have an impact on everybody long term, or is this just something that is a thing today that's kind of got me frustrated? Your
premise in the beginning of using the Brewster's Million analogy is, I think a lot of this pressure comes back from budget. Mm-hmm. Budget can fix a lot of problems, and having the ability to, hire for excess capacity, or, we're already super profitable. So I think those things make an impact on decisions. I think as you're growing a business, you're compromising decisions sometimes because of budget. And I know we all do it, right? We can't buy a Cadillac unless we can afford a Cadillac. We have to buy a Honda Accord. And same thing happens when you're growing a business. But I think the decision you make is impacting so many other things. And you have to be willing to push through that hard decision, put the steps in place to overcome it, and then have a plan for what that means long term. So we've had culture fit problems in our firm before. We brought in bad clients before. We brought in bad employees. And every single time we finally made the decision to either fire a client or fire an employee that was not a fit, or, every single time it was the right decision when we finally did it.
Yeah.
I wish we'd have done it sooner. Every single time.
I think that's probably, most people that find themselves in that situation would probably agree with that. Every single time it turns out, that's the right decision. But you do have to change your thinking to, the right decision isn't the decision today. It's what's the right decision maybe 5 years from now, 3 years from now, whatever it is, in the future. What is the right decision for that? You mentioned earlier, outside of people, tools or technology, this hits a lot. I remember back when, probably 8 years ago or so, and we were looking at different payroll solutions. One of the things that we were looking is how can we bolt on some of the needs that we have from a technology standpoint to our existing tools. And had we gone down that path further, it would have no doubt been a bad decision.
Yep.
Because that was what was needed for then at that moment, that day, but it wasn't the best answer for 5-10 years from now. And I think it's important, the framework to use around that a little bit is what I'm doing, the decision I'm making today. Am I solving today's irritation? Am I solving today's frustration? Or am I, pushing back from the daily to think through what is my strategy? Who do I want to be? What am I trying to accomplish 5-10 years from now?
Yep.
It changes your decision making.
And to add on to that, it's when you know the solution you have, and even if you just bought it and it's not the right solution, the moment you realize it's not the right solution, you have to cut it loose. You have to cut it loose. And it's hard to do. I'm pot committed. And we have that happen. We're pot committed to a couple software today that I go, gosh, if I was doing it again, would I do the same thing? I'm like, maybe not. And then I start thinking, well, what's the alternative? And then what's the blow up look like? And then how long is the fix?
And it doesn't necessarily mean that you blow it up today.
Correct.
It means that you are developing a plan to eventually replace that thing.
Yep.
And that plan may look like, all right, 3 years from now, we're going to start to do whatever it is. It's,
Correct.
It's because if every time that we get frustrated or whatever, it's
change,
then the entire team is going to be like, what are we doing, guys?
Yeah.
It gets to be a bit too much. I also liked one of the things that Scott, our EOS implementer, a tool that he gave us in kind of the rock setting, or what are we working on, big picture type of stuff. He gave us a tool that was essentially think about the decisions that you're making and the things that you're trying to accomplish, and write out, if this was fixed, if this was changed, what is the best case outcome? What does that look like? How does that impact your business? How does it multiply the resources that you're putting into it? And then write down, if this never changes, never gets fixed, what is the worst case scenario? And then thirdly, count the cost. What is it actually going to take to go from worst case to best case, detailed out in very explicit language. That way you can really see on paper, not just in your head, but on paper, not just the worst case and the best case, but the path that you're going to have to go through, the struggles that you're going to have to go through to kind of bridge that gap. I think doing that helps provide clarity on why you're making the decision that you're making, what's going to actually be impacted by the change, who needs to be involved in all of that. But ultimately, it's done with the light at the end of the tunnel, always right front and center on paper. And that's been helpful.
Yeah, that tool is also reinforced through Strategic Coach. And that was interesting. It's a it's an impact decision or whatever, I think is what they call it. But it's a cool tool just to kind of get the complete vision on what you're thinking. And I immediately, when you start talking about it, I immediately start thinking through recruiting in our own world. Like, this is a mistake that we probably don't invest enough in to get the results that we want to have. Think about how we have a sales team of 5 to hopefully find 3 new clients or 4 new clients a month. I think it's the same thing with recruiting in that we have put almost no resources,
Yeah.
not no dedicated resources to it, and then wonder why we don't get, we don't have this massive funnel of people running to our door every day to come work for us. And so I think it goes wrong in the same decision-making process.
That's a good point. At the end of the day, it's important to remove yourself from the daily grind of operating your business so that you can constantly and routinely think through, what am I trying to get to? What's my long-term goal? And for some people, long-term may be 30 years. For some people, it may be 5 years. You have to define that yourself. But having those routines in place where you're constantly pushing back from the daily, thinking about the long-term, is ultimately going to help everybody in your entire organization stay focused on where we're trying to get to, how we're going to get there, and making the best decisions along the path. So Matt, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. And for all of you guys listening, thank you for tuning back in with us. We are going to get back into schedule every single week. You're going to get a One Step Better podcast. And so make sure you click that subscribe button so that you never miss out. Thanks and have a great day. Thanks for listening to the One Step Better podcast. I'd really appreciate it if you would take some time to rate us 5 stars on your podcast player of choice, and make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you never miss out on another episode. Thanks and have a great day.